Baseball historian, here with another day of this day in Black baseball history. Today we're talking about October the 5th. Of course, today is October the 5th, 2025. So some of the items that we have will go back over 100 years. So we're going to talk about three specific items. And as you've ever followed me before, you know, when I give a fact or an event or something like that, I always give commentary that comes from my 45 years as a baseball historian. So before I get started, I do want to say I was down at the Negro Leagues Museum Hall of Game yesterday, and it was a grand event, and got a chance to see some pretty important individuals who have played a role in the African American baseball history. Dusty Baker was there. I always get a chance to talk to Dusty. I've talked to him several times before, and presenting him one of my books in the past. I'm about to send him another one of my books. And also, who was there? Willie Randolph. Willie Randolph was there, former manager of the New York Yankees. Of course, you probably remember him as a great second baseman. That's where I first picked him up, and probably many of you did as well. And then also, Cito Gaston was there. The first African-American manager to win back-to-back World Series, and he was there. And I'm trying to think, Emmanuel, I'm trying to think of his name. He was a manager of the White Sox. Come on, somebody help me out, because I know I've got listeners on here that know everything. And you guys follow me really closely. So if I miss a beat, you guys always let me know. Hold on, let me get a drink right quick. So anyway, yeah. So it was a great event. I started to bring the program in. Now, if you follow me on X, Phil S. Dixon, of course, I'm at Negro League Man there. I have a clip from last night with music behind it. You'll find it quite interesting. So please go out there and look at that as well. And you can find me in several places. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook, Phil S. Dixon. Then I have several pages for different books that I've written. My book on Bully Rogan has a page. My book on Rube Foster has a page. My book on John Buck O'Neill has a page. And so my book on the Philadelphia Giants has a page. My book on the 1931 Homestead Grace has a page. I haven't made one for my 1910 Chicago Leaving Giants book yet, and a few other publications, but I'm going to get to that. So I'm in a different room tonight, as you can tell. This is my office. This is where I've created a lot of history over the years, and you can see a few things on the wall there from some of my accolades and different things that I've participated in baseball. So I'm trying the lighting here. It's a little different than where I'm normally sitting, but let's see if we can get through this, all right? So here we go. We're going to start with the first event for October 5th, and it says Saul White's Philadelphia Giants crushed the Brooklyn Royal Giants by a 17-2 score in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Emmett Bowman tossed a six-hitter to win his 37th game, and Pete Hill laced 5 hits, and Dan McQuillan posted 4 hits in the game. And every Philadelphia batter had at least 1 hit, and every batter scored at least 1 run. Of course, Mike Moore was the leader in run scoring for the Philadelphia Giants. He scored 4. So let's break this down just a little bit. Well, first of all, Emmett Bowman. That particular year, I think I ended up with about 39 wins, but I'm almost sure he won 40 games. I just can't prove it because the way that the records were kept. But I can get to 39, 38 easy with documentation. And part of that will be in my a new upcoming book on the Philadelphia Giants, and it's a revised edition of my 1905 Philadelphia Giants. I think this is the 3rd revision. So every time I'm learning something more, learning something new, and giving you something else. So Emmett Bowman, and when you talk about those 40-game winners in the National American League, these guys always get left out. And so it's my job to bring this information to you. Also, Pete Hill. Pete Hill picked up 5 hits in this game. Now, Pete Hill will finish the 1905 season with 209 hits. That makes him a premier hitter in the baseball of that time. And so once again, when I came along, you know, I read so much about the New York Giants and Turkey Mike Donlin. He was a great hitter. Matter of fact, Mike played against the Chicago Leland Giants in, I think, in 1907. And Rube Foster would just eat the guy's lunch. Rube Foster, he couldn't hit Rube Foster to save his life. But Turkey Mike, he had over 200 hits that year, or was darn close to it. And so Pete Hill's right there with him. And because he's an African-American baseball player and they're playing segregated baseball, because they couldn't get into the American National League and minor leagues all over the country, for years their history was discounted. But Pete Hill's going to finish the year with 209 hits. And guess what? Not only did he do this, he did this year after year after year. And I in my heart of hearts, I believe that Pete Hill was the first player to get to 4,000 hits. I hope to prove it, all right? Because you guys, you don't have to take my word for it. Just know that the history, the box scores, the information is there, but it's going to take someone who has a love for the game, like myself, to continue to bring forth this information. And then after you bring forth the information, yeah, everybody will recite the information, but everybody's not going to dig it out, okay? So, all right. And then, of course, Dan McClellan, we talked about him the other day. I talked about Dan McClellan, how badly he's being cheated as far as being one of the greatest left-handers of that period. And there's no real serious talk about getting him in the Hall of Fame. And I think that's a darn shame. Pete Hill is in the Hall of Fame. Elman Bowman had a short career. I think maybe if he had had a longer career, you could make a stronger argument for him. But the time he was there, he was a factor. He was a player to be dealt with. Not only could he pitch, he could play every position on the diamond. Occasionally, he'd go behind the bat and catch. So, all right then. Of course, Mike Moore. Mike Moore, born in Detroit, raised in Chicago. He's a super sub. And he was one of the men who made the 1905 Philadelphia Giants as great as they were. Now, they had Home Run Johnson. They had Bill Monroe, Charlie Grant. And the guy that doesn't get talked about very much is Mike Moore. Mike Moore was a super sub. And one of the greatest utility players of that generation. So all those guys are participating in there. And I always find these games with the lopsided scores, but they crushed the Brooklyn Royal Giants that day. All right. Okay, let's go to October 5th, 1913. Now, you know you see what I'm wearing right here. Mohawk, I guess it's turned around, but it's a Mohawk Giants shirt. So we're going to talk about that. So here we go. Two Kansans, Frank Wickware for the Schenectady Mohawk Giants, battled as Walter Johnson's All-Stars lost a 1-0 game delayed by members of the Giants who were due 6 weeks of back pay. Johnson struck out 11 batters in 5 innings before darkness ended the game. Wickware with 9 batters. And this story was carried all across America. You can find at least 40 to 50, maybe more references related to this game. And why would they be talking about this game? Well, first of all, you had Frank Wickware. Frank Wickware in 1910 won 40 games with the Chicago Leland Giants. Another good pitcher. Comes from Girard, Kansas. Now, I presented in Girard, Kansas. I can tell you this great story. I'm going to tell you the story. This was this year. It was in March of this year. I knew I was going to go and present in Albany, New York. So Frank Wickware is buried right in Schenectady, and they're just bumped right together in case you don't know that part of the country. So you leave one city and you don't know you're in the next one, right? So they're bumped, Albany and Schenectady, bumped right next to each other. And Frank Wickware passed away in Schenectady, New York. So I knew I was going to go up there. So I called his hometown, Girard, Kansas, and began to tell them about Frank Wickware. So they looked it up online, and there was things saying that Frank Wickware was born in Coffeyville, Kansas, which is not correct. He later moved to Coffeyville, Kansas, where his father worked for the Coffeyville Journal, the local newspaper. So there's lots of things that his dad would come back and tell the reporters, and they would go to work. And this game of Walter Johnson also appears in Coffeyville. But anyway, So I knew I was going to be going. So I called the local library, talked to the mayor down. I forget the mayor's name now, but I talked to him. I said, "Hey, look, I'm going to be coming down there. I'm going to be speak. Can you guys present me like a jar, a mason jar full of soil?" And so they granted that wish. And so I came down there, gave a 45-minute presentation, had a nice crowd down there. They gave away popcorn, all this stuff. It was good. I live in Kansas, so it wasn't a far trip for me. So I got on the plane. I took that jar of soil to Schenectady, New York, where we had set up another ceremony at the cemetery. So after I got to Schenectady, I presented, I forget what night it was, in Albany. And the next morning, we went out to the cemetery where Frank Leland is buried. And I was able to sprinkle that Kansas soil over his grave in Schenectady, New York. And I gave a talk, and it was picked up by a couple of newspapers. You can go out there and Google Phil S. Dixon and Frank Wickware, it'll pop up. And I was able to bring recognition to Frank Wickware. And because most of you know, if you follow me, I do play trumpet. So I concluded the program with playing taps for Frank Wickware because he was a World War I veteran. But this gave Frank Wickware some added publicity. And while there, people took me around and everything. They took me down to the ballpark where this game occurred. And of course, they gave me a souvenir t-shirt, and I'm wearing it tonight. So Walter Johnson, we know him. Walter Johnson, Humboldt, Kansas, in that area. If you go down to Humboldt now, there's a park, Walter Johnson Park down in Humboldt. I presented there as well. So I presented in Girard, I presented in Humboldt, and then how about this? That's Humboldt, Kansas. And then I've also presented in Schenectady, where this game took place. So hey, guys, I'm out here living the dream. I'm doing the real thing. I'm out here just trying to be a part of this history, to make you a part of the history and keeping the history alive. I'm not playing with this. This is serious business to me. So anyway, that is the game, and it was called after 5 innings. Now, they had to delay the game because they weren't getting paid, and they were due back pay. How do you get your pay? And they're at the end of the season, you're in October, so they know if they didn't do something drastic, they would leave there, and those guys might still owe them money to this day. That happened a lot. People would just get stiffed on the gate receipts. So it was a challenge when you're part of the Negro baseball experience. So they had a protest, and some wealthy guy in Schenectady gave the money, and they went ahead and played the game, and these are the results. This game has gone down in history. It is a great, great game for Walter Johnson and also Frank Wickware. Now, Walter Johnson knew Frank Wickware from several run-ins that they had as far as, battling each other. And I read an article that Walter Johnson said that Frank Wickware is the greatest pitcher he's ever seen. And he said, he said pretty much that I don't want to offend people like Christy Matthews in the nose, but he really believed Frank Wickware was one of the all-time greats. And I believe that too. And that's another guy that should come up for serious Hall of Fame and Cooperstown consideration. All right, so let's go to another one. We go to one more, and we're going to finish out. Okay, how about let's jump all the way to October 5th, 1954. Oscar McKinley Charleston died in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And of course, I call him, I don't know how much you know about Oscar Charleston. Maybe I better slow down a bit. Oscar Charleston is one of the all-time greats from the Negro Baseball League, prior to the league and through the league. And I mean, he did a lot. He was a manager, he was an outfielder, he was a great first baseman, played on prominent teams. I wrote about him a lot when he was managing the 1931 Homestead Grays, who I happen to think was probably the strongest professional baseball team ever assembled. Man, you know what? I think if they had played the 27 Yankees, the Yankees wouldn't have looked very good against the 31 Grays. They had it all. And so this was just a great team, and Oscar Charleston was the leader of that team. So, and back in the early 20s, in the teens there, before the 1920s, if an African American team was playing like a National American League All-Star team, and they wanted to make sure that they win those series, they would always bring Oscar Charleston in. So that's why I call him the original Mr. October. Of course, growing up, we heard about Reggie Jackson and all his great feats. Not to take anything away from Reggie Jackson, but some things, for the record, have already occurred, and there are people who did great achievements in that same month, October. So Oscar Charleston is my Mr. October, the first one, and I'll say Reggie Jackson is Mr. October number 2. All right. So Oscar Charleston, he died October 5th, 1954. And how ironic is it that he was born also October, he's born October 14th, 1896. So it's kind of ironic that Mr. October, my Mr. October, was born and died in October. And he was just a tremendous player. There's some good literature on him. If you go look up Oscar Charleston, you'll find a lot of really good and interesting things written on Oscar Charleston. So I'm not going to give a lot of facts. I missed yesterday because I was at the Negro League event, and I was just happy to be there. Jerry Manuel, that's the White Sox manager. I couldn't get his name at first. Also last night, in addition to those guys being there, Amos Otis, the outfielder, was there. Willie Mays Aikens, you probably remember him, first baseman for the Kansas City Royals. He was there. Joe Carter was there. I'm trying to think who else I saw. Some that stood out. And it was an event sponsored by the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum. So I'm just so happy to be out here telling this history and keeping you guys informed. So if you like what I'm doing here, you like this day in baseball history with commentary, all right? If you like that, go ahead and subscribe. I'm new to this. Is like I'm going into my 3rd month. So every subscriber I pick up is important to me, guys. So if you like this kind of commentary, you want to learn more from a person who's well seasoned, who's traveling around the country, and even when I look at this, I presented in Philadelphia. I presented in Indianapolis too. So I think the Brooklyn Royal Giants came from New York. I presented in New York, but never in Brooklyn. Say, hey, would somebody invite me to Brooklyn? I would be happy to come. I have a unique program, and if you've ever heard me speak, I've gotten many standing ovations. So I work very hard at this. So this is just a little bit of baseball history that's gone on here. And so I'm looking here, and we got a few people. Somebody named Cam9MZ. Thank you for joining in. And got some people who look like here, they're outside the United States. And the Yips guy, YEEPS. Hey, thanks for joining in. And like I said, if you like what we're doing here, by all means, go out and subscribe and like the broadcast, share it to someone. And like I said, I'm new. So anything we can do to build this broadcast and support this, it helps me a great deal. In the meanwhile, I'm out here speaking. The next time I go out to present, I'll be in Pittsburgh, Kansas. I'm going to be talking about George Sweat. I'm going to his college that he went to, Pittsburgh State College. And it's kind of ironic because I may be the only person living who knew George Sweat, especially I'm the only person who does baseball history for sure who knew George Sweat. And I knew John Hallway knew George Sweat, but Hallway passed away at 90-something years old. And we had many conversations about Mr. Sweat. So anyway, George Sweat played for the Kansas City Monarchs, played for the Chicago American Giants. I'm going to his hometown. Actually, not his hometown. His hometown is Humboldt. How about that? That same hometown as Walter Johnson. But I will be going to his college, Pittsburgh, Kansas. It was a teacher's college back in the day when he attended. So guys, I'm out of here. And I'm getting out of here about 20 minutes. I like to keep it about 20 minutes and go in here and check and see who won the football games today. And of course, I grew up in Kansas City, so naturally I was a Chiefs fan. And so I go and see what's going on in the AL West, or AFL West. It used to be the AL West. All right, thank you guys. You have a nice day, and I am out of here. And this is Phil Dixon, and you have a nice day until we meet again.